This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And my guest today is Rick Heyland, and Rick has written a book that I haven't purchased yet. I have downloaded so many books, Rick. I think I need another couple of lives to get through them all. But I'm really interested because you wrote this book sort of based on your experience during the pandemic, Live Your Best Life. And interestingly enough, the pandemic has made a good majority of us take stock in how we've been living our life and what we can do to better ourselves. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Karen.
Thank you. Give us a little bit of background about who Rick is and how you really got to writing the book.
Sure. I'll try to make it a little short, but I currently live in Draper, Utah with my wife. We have 6 kids and 15 grandkids. And in 2019, I retired from a 32-year consulting career. And that's where I really discovered the power of purpose. And actually, it goes back to a 26-year-old, and I'm struggling in MBA school. I just moved my family across the country to an Eastern school, and it was a little intimidating. I was one of the youngest people in the class, the only people with kids, interestingly enough. And we had 2 little kids at the time. And I remember we were a couple months in the program and a big test came back. And I knew because I was the youngest and least experienced, I had to work hard, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. And so I did. And I had worked my heart out. We'd made this big investment to move across. We didn't know anybody, you know, that whole story when you uproot your everything you know and love.
Right.
And so it was kind of a stressful time. And I got that first test back, economics, and it was I'm going to say a C-, and it was one of the lowest grades in the class. And I had worked as hard as I could, and I had sacrificed and worked. So I kind of, you know, had a pity party on a Friday night and pretty discouraged, went home to talk to Cheryl. And so on a Saturday morning, I woke up with a little bit refreshed and said, you know what, I'm going to go downstairs in our unfinished townhouse at the time. And I'm going to read and write and figure this out. What, you know, did we make the right move? What am I going to do with my career? Blah, blah, blah. So big questions were going on in my head. And I remembered Richard Bowles and Stephen R. Covey and different Viktor Frankl. People write about the power of having purpose or mission or vision for your life. I use those terms interchangeably a little bit, and I'm going to use mostly the purpose term here, but really kind of trying to articulate your end in mind, your vision for your life. And so I did that weekend, and I asked a couple of crucial questions. What are my strengths? What do I bring to the table? What do I enjoy doing? And then the third question I found quite powerful and that I recommend to others and also in the book is envision yourself. So the first 2 questions were kind of backward looking to try to, you know, figure out who I am and who I want to be. And this next question was forward looking, which I like the combination, the balance of backward and forward. And the forward looking question is, I'm at my funeral. This is a Stephen R. Covey question that I found in chapter 3 of his book. You're at your funeral, you're able to watch. And what do you want people to say? Now, you can't control what people say and all that, but if you had a vision for what's going on and what people are saying at that funeral, and you had a chance to impact that now, how would you want them to articulate your life? You know, the hardest working, toughest, grindest, richest, you know, or is there more to it than that? So those were, Karen, 3 powerful questions that I asked myself that weekend. And I came up with a 20-word statement around continuous improvement, action orientation, make a difference in people's lives. And so I went back to school on Monday. I was a little refreshed and renewed. I can't remember a big impact from writing that purpose statement, but if I fast forward over a year later and we're starting to look for jobs, all of a sudden, it wasn't going well. And I wasn't attracted to many of the jobs at all, and they weren't attracted to me. But all of a sudden, a posting came for this niche consulting firm that Karen had almost the exact same words in their recruitment advertisement that I had in my mission statement, my purpose statement. And all of a sudden, I remembered that exercise and that who I wanted to be, and continuous improvement, action orientation, make a difference in performance and people. And I jumped at it. And I told, when I went home to Cheryl that day, I said, I found my job. It's amazing. It's written for me, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, a few days later, got it back. I wasn't on the list. Pretty bummed. But before I could throw another pity party, I called the head recruiter and say, she said, hey, I think you made a bit of a mistake. I should have been on this list. I don't know if I was that bold, but anyhow, the purpose and that vision kind of led me to be, and what did I have to lose at that point, right? I wasn't on the list. And so anyhow, long story short, she said, okay, pencil your name in at 5 o'clock. You'll be number 11 on the interview list. Long story short, I was the only one to get a job of that recruiting class that year. And I went on to have a 32-year career, retired as the second largest shareholder, COO of Americas. Anyhow, it turned out to be a fantastic experience about making a difference, continuous improvement, and achieving financial independence for myself. And so it was when I went to retire then, and this is even pre-COVID, just before actually, I thought, you know what, I know I don't want to retire, I'll semi-retire. So I started this little online coaching and products and podcasting company called CI for Life, Continuous Improvement for Life. And I wrote this book called Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide to living your best life. And so that was the genesis of why I wrote the book, because I had such a great experience with it. And then, consulting and working with large companies and people around the value of vision and purpose for their company and for themselves. And so I thought, as a passion project, I'll write this book and see if I can articulate for others the power that comes from articulating a purpose and then living a purpose.
As I'm listening to you, and I'm sure many of our listeners are hearing the same thing. Oh, well, Rick has this special thing about him that he did this, that he wrote down his purpose and he lived for his purpose. But I want our listeners to understand, it is so true. When you believe in something that you want to do, you have a passion. Not everything's going to be perfect. You're going to hit those obstacles along the way. But I like to say that you turn those obstacles into challenges, because a challenge, you have a chance to overcome something, or maybe just meet it head on and learn something. So for the beginning
Very well said.
of my life, I always wanted to be what everybody else wanted me to be.
Okay.
But I didn't realize that's what I was doing. And the day that I woke up and realized, wait a second, I'm not happy. And I remember writing a blog about it, and my older brother read it, and he said to me, what are you waiting for? And I said, well, to be happy. He said, and how is that going to happen? And it made me think about it. I had to be the one to choose something that would start to make me happy.
Yes.
I was in a good marriage. I had, 2 wonderful children. My mother was still living and was healthy. I have a good relationship with my brothers. But I never thought of those things, that they brought pleasure to me and that made me happy. And so every day I would wake up and pick one thing that made me happy, so that if I started to drown in my pity party, like you talked about, I could then focus on this happiness.
Yep. Yeah, I start the book, chapter 1, introduction, with some research from Bronnie Ware, who's a palliative nurse, I think in Australia. And she talks about the top 5 regrets of people that are dying, right? And this ties into your comment, Karen. And number 1 is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2 is, I wish I had not worked so hard. Number 3 is, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I had to stay in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. So that's the whole, and there's many tools to do this, but one of them, and of course you need good stress management principles, and we can talk about that. That's the 3rd section of the book. But the first one is to describe for yourself what that vision of rich and happy, I call, like successful and happy. How can you balance the two? I love the thought, because I know a lot of rich, unhappy people.
Oh, absolutely.
Or we would call successful, unhappy people. And so how do we do both. And part of it is this idea of identifying the life that you want, how you want to be remembered, and then reverse engineering it back to, okay, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to choose today to start to make that vision of my life possible? And yeah, that ties nicely into that Brownie Ware piece of research, into what you were saying, but purpose is one of those tools. In fact, I did the research when I was writing the book. I said, is it just me that purpose is powerful for? And of course, the answer is no. And there's been tons of powerful research, even during COVID. The latest one, McKinsey Meg Quarterly, May 2021, there's some really good pieces of article on purpose, and they talk about the value of purpose at work, that people are more 6.5, if they find purpose at work, if that brings them joy, pleasure, happiness, satisfaction, that they're 6.5 times more resilient to kind of work through the hard times. Because just because you have purpose and a vision for your life, to your point, doesn't mean you're going to have happiness every day. And
Right.
there's going to be lots of roadblocks, and including in my career, setbacks. But you go back to that grounding principles of who you want to become, and make a plan from that. And it generates a whole ton of enthusiasm and energy to overcome setbacks. Because the promise isn't that there won't be setbacks, it's the power to overcome them. And the research, and this is the chapter 3 of the book, Benefits of Purpose. And I got 10, these are just 10. I just plucked off the first pieces of research I looked at. Enhanced health and physical well-being, greater resilience, as we just talked about, increased happiness, increased life satisfaction, better psychological well-being, more likely to engage in healthy habits, right? Isn't that a good one? Less chronic illness, such as stroke or heart disease, lower incidence of dementia, higher quality of life, longer life, right? So one of my mother has dementia, her mother has dementia, Alzheimer's. And so I'm fully motivated and fully invested in figuring out and reading every book I can right now. But that's one of the benefits of articulating, trying to live out of purpose or live out of a vision for your life.
You know, there's a whole generation of individuals that were brought up, and comes back to my generation. We were brought up not to overly express our needs, because that would be selfish. It was, doing for others as you would want them to do unto you. And I sort of go back and look at that and sort of laugh a little bit, because like I said, for about the first 50 years of my life, I was trying to please my mother and father, trying to please my brothers. I looked up to them. I fell in love with, all their boyfriends. I wanted to be noticed. And I just felt like everything I was doing, I was just like a hamster in a cage. And when I finally took this step back and said, wait a second, there's got to be more to life. I can still do for other people, but I have to do it more willingly, not because
I like that.
I feel responsible. And so I'm noticing that the younger generation today really believes that they have to take care of themselves first. And I'm really curious, where was that turn in the last couple of centuries? Because it just seems like it flipped from helping everybody else to starting with helping yourself.
Now, I think it's a balance, isn't it? If we could find the medium balance between those two principles, I think we're going to nail it, and not be too extreme on one side or the other. In fact, and this is borne out in research, but I did my own little project, 1,500 people I interviewed on mail survey chimp, or what was the survey tool called? I guess it doesn't matter, but 1,500 people in Canada, US, Australia, and the UK. And I asked them several questions, and some of the insights I gathered from it is people that find purpose in their life. It didn't say they had a purpose statement, but that feel like they have purpose in their life are 32% happier. So that was one interesting insight. The second, and this bears out in individual research on each of these three topics, is then I researched and said, I asked the question and correlated of the people that said they were the happiest, what were their habits? And it came down to three things. And this is the balance between the past generation and the forward generation. And this isn't in priority order, but the three habits were daily self-care, and specifically exercise. So that's part of okay, I got to take care. If I'm going to be the best for somebody else, I got to take care of myself. I got to feel good about myself. my mind, my body, my gut, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. Number two was in service of others. So there is still a care component and service component that's critical, right? And you can do it. We know that you can do it too much so that you're not doing self-care practices. And then the third one, interestingly enough, and I think it wraps it all together, was they daily plan. They have a plan, they have purpose each day. And it's a broad mix. And I like to think it's a broad mix of, physical, emotional, mental work, and a broad spectrum of things that they're planning in there. So isn't that interesting? There's that nice balance of self-care, nice balance of still in service to others. That
Right.
still gives us meaning and gratification. And then they have a plan. They're working towards something and they have some purpose, small p purpose each day. So isn't that interesting, Karen? That kind of fits both generations, if you will.
Absolutely. And, yesterday I was doing a podcast with one of my clients, and we were talking about the fact that those of us who are in a better frame of mind, more aware of ourselves, we realize that no matter what our plan is for the day, there can be things that are going to take us off course. And I used to get very upset when I was off course. I would just want to go climb under the covers and make the day go away and start all over again. However, when I started thinking about it and started making these personal changes for myself, I looked at the obstacles that would pop up during the day. And I would try to identify which ones I actually created, because oftentimes we do create them, and which ones that I had no connection to. They're there, maybe brought on by somebody else, maybe Mother Nature, but whatever it was, and then realize I can only control so much. And what I can control is what I put in front of me, not what just happens to fall from the sky in front of me. So if our listeners can understand that, you and I become a little bit more human to them, that we are not perfect, but yet we've done the research and we're doing the research for ourselves to see what makes us tick better each day. And that's what it sounds like you've done with the book.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's a couple of components to what you just said. There's a mindset component to that. And then there's also a practical, like I'm an implementation guy, like, okay, how can I build skills, habits, tools in my life so I can envision, bring to pass, not be perfect, but bring to pass this vision for my life. Because your point is very well taken around perfections and the fallacies of that. And so what I developed, and this is actually, if people are into tools and need some tools to help live their best life, I developed this planner. It's available on Amazon, Live Your Best Life Planner. And it starts out, the first section is, what is your purpose? Then it goes into your goals, 90-day goals and 90-day action plans. But then to your last point, it goes down to planning for the day. And then what are your top 3 priorities? And be flexible. Like, even though I've got 19 things on today, there's only 3 priorities. And Karen, you're one of them. And so I might not get one of those 19 things done, but I'm going to really focus to try to get those top 3 priorities done, right? Yep. And then on the other side page every day, there's the daily learnings and gratitude. And gratitude is so important for us that make mistakes and have to be flexible and learn, so what are the blessings in our life? Yes, there was 3 setbacks yesterday in my relationship at work, whatever it might've been, but what blessings did, and getting the mind to focus on that. And then what are my learnings from yesterday? What did I really learn from either what went well or so, rather than being, the ups and downs in life, just what do we learn? What are we grateful for every day? Train your brain to focus on the blessings. And if there were setbacks, what am I going to learn from that? To your point, what can I control out of that, that I can change? Is it my mindset? Is my habits, whatever it might be? So there is an acknowledgement that we're not going to be perfect, but there is some tools and practices in place to help us live our best life. And live best life doesn't mean happiness 100% of every day, every moment. It means that we're curious, we're learning, we're grateful. And some of those mindset and habits are very powerful as you're planning each day.
Absolutely. So as you were making all these changes for yourself, how did it affect your family? Because sometimes we get to a point where, okay, we're not happy with what we're doing. We know that we got to make changes. In fact, when I left corporate America, that's exactly what happened for me. But I was afraid in the beginning that if I changed as much as I wanted to, my husband, my sons, my mother, were going to get the ripple effect, and it might harm them in some way. And so at first I was very careful, but then I made the choice. I can't do it in these tiny baby steps, because there were some things I just had to pull off of me and just move forward. And so I did. But in my case, what I found was everybody around me saw me in a different light. They appreciated me more. Their expectations were not as high as they were before, because I set those expectations for them. So what was it like for you and your family? Because you say you have, what, 6 children? So
Yeah.
yeah, you have a lot to contend with there.
Yeah. And I would say I'm 60 years old now. And I would say for the first half plus of my life, I was a hard charging goals, purpose guy. And then as the kids got older and I matured a little bit, I learned, and this is the last half of the book, is the other half of it. And I'm going to call it's either, stress management principles, setback principles. I'm going to call it growth mindset. So I didn't teach. So in fact, it's interesting, in my 40s, I added and changed my purpose statement to add the words teach and practice continuous improvement was the core of what I had as a 26-year-old. And then somewhere in my mid 40s, I added with love and compassion. And what I wish I had known as a 20-something that I learned as a 40-something is the importance of, whether you're raising kids or at work, on adding that love and compassion and teaching people growth mindset and curiosity and learning and how to handle setbacks. I just taught them principles of capture the world, have a vision for your life, have goals. And they noticed the change as I started to shift. I read a book called Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it kind of brought the whole piece together for me. Still the value of being intentional in your life, having plans, trying to be something, create your life into something. And Eckhart Tolle added, and this is in the last, I guess it's the third of the book. All right, so you're living purposely. How do you stay on purpose? What are the skills and tools to stay present and enjoy each moment, even though I'm still striving? In Corinthians, Paul calls it full and hungry. How do I stay striving, hungry, still trying to improve my life, and at the same time full and present and enjoying today? And that's a powerful skill set that I didn't combine until in my 40s. And so my kids today, or a couple of years ago, even say, Dad, you're softer. Dad, you're more they're all, thank goodness. And so that's the part that I've, as a recovering perfectionist, have learned from Eckhart Tolle and others to add to the piece of the puzzle, that you don't want to just be the hardest charging, accomplish every goal in your life, and no matter what cost, that there's that other skill set of gratitude and staying present and acceptance and all those tools and ideas that help us enjoy today and strive to be better. How's that feel, Karen?
I love it because, again, I came from a family that was very positive, but I grew up in a neighborhood or a culture that said, you could only do so much to a certain age, and then you know what, you can't change. But I'm constantly been evolving. And even though I didn't realize how much I was, like I said, when I left corporate America and I sat back and I said, okay, what now? That's when I started reflecting on a lot of great things I did in my earlier life, but never saw them as great. They were just things I had accomplished. And I realized that here I am, age 72, and not only have I been doing podcasts and blogging and creating websites for clients, I developed my own creation called a coach advocate. And that's what I'm loving doing now, is when I'm communicating with other people and I can hear them telling me they're struggling. They don't know how to get out of it. You know what? I've taken the coaching classes. I am not a coach. I don't want to be a coach, but I want to lead people to coaching so that they can get the assistance if that is what they choose. And
Yeah.
so what you saw at age 25, 30 definitely changed by the time you became 40. Since 40, you have changed as well. And the one thing that I know is I can't expect everybody else around me to change.
Right.
And sometimes that's the hard part. You're changing, you're growing, you're evolving, and you're leaving people behind you. But there's a way to balance that. And I think that's something that you were talking about earlier, that find those balances.
Yeah, there's people have to desire, and hopefully it's before rock bottom, to change, right? And so that's why, as coaches and consultants and podcasters and bloggers, we're trying to make a difference for people to hopefully catch them when they're ready to change and give them tools and processes and ideas to help their mindset, skill set, and tool set. But to your first point, let me just make a comment. My own father at 85, who taught me most of these principles, my mom and dad, during COVID, had a heck of a time. My mom was deepening in her Alzheimer's, and as an 85-year-old, it's not easy to take care of someone that's mentality and mindset is going and gone. And so he, at 85, redid his purpose statement based on when the book came out. And so I did a podcast with him and a blog, and I'm on social media as well, and talked about it. But at 85, he found the power to re-articulate his vision for his life and to make the changes. So it's never too late to change, right? In your 60s, in your 80s, in your 40s, in your 20s. The point is, just like investing, it's better to start in when you're 20 or 30. So it's better to start and develop these great habits the earlier you can, but it's never too late.
Well, and I think that's important for us all to understand, because I will tell you, real quick story. When I was 21, I had my first son, and my roommate in the hospital, she was having child number 4. She had 3 girls. She was hoping for a 4th girl. Turned out she had a boy, but I looked over at her and she was all of 28 years old. So 7 years older than me. And I thought, oh my God, you're 28 and you're having another baby. It's like, what does this world come to? Forward ahead, when I had my first child at 21, I had my second child when I was 40. And so how our perspective on life changes.
Yeah.
Because again, as a 21-year-old, I thought, oh, she's awfully old to be having a 4th child. And I remember people saying to me when I got pregnant at 40, like, was that on purpose? And it was like, yeah, you better believe it was. But our life has totally changed. We hear women who are in their 50s that maybe haven't had a child, and now they're out adopting a child because that's part of their purpose at that point of life.
Right.
So I am so elated to hear about your father. I mean, that is exciting, that even with everything going on around him, he felt the need to design his new purpose in life. And that had to have been very hard, knowing that his wife is almost in this alternate universe right now.
Right.
And yet he knows that his life must go on.
Yeah. Yeah. It change is hard. and particularly the older you get, but the purpose or vision description for your life and re-articulating that is a very powerful way. I know a lot of people when they retire struggle. And this is also a time to re-articulate a vision for your life. Okay, so that was a great phase of my life. How am I going to articulate this next phase now that it's different, rather than, drag around for a couple of years, figure out how do I find that purpose at 60? Is a great time, or when you're changing careers, is a great time to try to re-articulate that and re-envision your life for the next 20 years or whatever. But yeah, it's never too late. And it's a great tool that if you're stuck or you're in a big change, it's a great exercise to go through to help you pull out of that or make the best of that change.
So how can our listeners find you? Because you have a wealth of information. And like I've said before, I have talked to, probably out of the 108 episodes we've done so far, probably 100 of them have been with various coaches. And I learned something new from each of you. And I think that's important for someone who's looking for a coach to understand that you need to have a repertoire between you and the person you're going to work with.
Yeah.
Because if you're working with Rick isn't going to tell you how to change your life. You're going to tell Rick what you need to change and why you need to change it. And I know with one of my coaches a couple of weeks ago, I said, I really need to change this. And I explained to her, and she just sat there on the other end of the screen and said, you have to change it? And I said, well, yes. And she goes, and if you don't, what happens? And then I started realizing it wasn't so much I had to really change it. I had to look at it differently. I had to make some modifications. A big difference from just saying, I've got to change this. I can't do this anymore. So when you're looking for a coach, find somebody who you connect with. So how can our listeners,
Yeah, really good points there. So the easy way is to go to CI4Life, the number 4 in the middle there, ci4life.org. That's my website. And you can find on there a chance to sign up for a free coaching assessment. And that is to do exactly what you're talking about, to get to know one another and see if there's a connection there. And that's why I make it free, that first call, so that we can see if I can help you and you feel like so it's a vice versa opportunity here. And there are lots of free content on there as well. You can also go to Amazon and find the book, Live Your Purpose by Rick Heyland. Heyland is spelled Heyland. It looks Heyland, but pronounced Heyland. There's also on there that planner that I just showed you, Live Your Best Life Planner. That's all on Amazon. You can go on social media on TikTok, Instagram and Facebook under my name, Rick Heyland, Heyland. Lots of free content there that I'm always talking about these ideas of purpose, goals, and then how do I handle setback and keep growing through the setback to accomplish my goals and my vision. So those are different ways people can interact with me.
And if you just heard Rick rattle that all off and you say, hey, I forgot it already, look in the show notes, because we always make sure those connections are there. And you can always come back to the show and listen to it again. And Rick, we're going to have you back on again. I have a great, I don't know if it's great, but I have an idea in mind of putting together a podcast with various coaches, all on the same program, so that people will get that idea that, you all have that same idea in mind, but you're going to deliver it differently. You're going to react with this differently.
Yep.
So
I'd love to. That'd be great, Karen. I appreciate what you're doing as a coach advocate.
Thank you very much. And you have a wonderful day.
All right.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.